Meghan Markle looked sombre as she arrived for the Queen's state funeral this morning behind Kate and Sophie Wessex. The Duchess of Sussex made her way into Westminster Abbey as her husband Prince Harry took part in a procession with other royals behind the Queen's coffin from Westminster Hall ahead of the service at 11 a.m. Meghan wore a black dress, stilettos and a large hat for the solemn occasion. Her hair was styled into a low bun and she completed her outfit with a pair of pearl earrings. She entered the Abbey behind the Princess of Wales, who was with her two eldest children Prince George and Princess Charlotte, and the Countess of Wessex, who was later spotted dabbing a tear from her eye. Meghan and Harry, who are living in California after quitting royal duties in 2020, were reunited as they took their seats in the second row behind the King and Queen consort. Members of the royal family were among 2,000 guests, including presidents and prime ministers from across the globe, who gathered at the church to remember the late monarch on Monday morning. Meghan Markle cuts lonely figure as she silently enters church behind Kate and Sophie. Image, Getty/PA, Meghan arrives at Westminster Abbey ahead of the service at 11 a.m. Image, Getty, Meghan walks behind the Countess of Wessex. Image, Getty, Meghan enters the Abbey behind Kate and her children. Image, Getty, Harry took part in a procession from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey ahead of the service. Image, Getty, the Sussexes sat behind the King and Queen consort. Image, Getty. King Charles III handed 5-point plan with advice on Harry and Meghan's future infirm. King Charles III has been handed a 5-point manifesto to ensure he kicks off his reign of the United Kingdom in a bold fashion. The 5 points include apologies on behalf of the royal family and letting Harry and Meghan in from the cold. Read more here. King Charles led a procession behind the Queen's coffin from Westminster Hall, where she had been lying in state, to Westminster Abbey for the service at 11 a.m. The state gun carriage carried the coffin, which was draped in the royal standard and carried the imperial state crown and a wreath of flowers containing plants from the gardens of royal residences. The king was immediately behind with his siblings Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward. They were followed by the Prince of Wales, Duke of Sussex and Peter Phillips. Hundreds of military personnel took part in the procession in a display of pomp and pageantry. The Queen's coffin was carried inside by the bearer party of Grenadier Guards. Once inside, Kate with George, a future king, Charlotte, and the Duchess of Sussex joined the procession behind the coffin to the nave. A large number of wider royals attended the funeral, including Sarah Ferguson, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie and their husbands, Zara and Mike Tyndall, and the Queen's niece Lady Sarah Chatto. The royal family were sat opposite from foreign kings and queens, including King Willem-Alexander of the Netherlands, Prince Albert of Monaco and King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia of Spain. A single toll from Big Ben signaled the start of the service at Westminster Abbey. During the service, the Archbishop of Canterbury referenced the Dame Vera Lynn wartime song the late Queen spoke of as she addressed the nation during the COVID pandemic. Justin Welby said, "We will all face the merciful judgment of God, we can all share the Queen's hope which in life and death inspired her servant leadership. Service in life, hope in death. All who follow the Queen's example, and inspiration of trust and faith in God, can with her say, we will meet again." Following the service, the Sussexes walked side by side, not holding hands, in the wake of controversy about them holding hands when they left Westminster Hall after the short service at the beginning of the Queen's lying in state on Wednesday. The Duchess of Sussex arrives for the service. Image, Getty. The Duchess of Sussex wore a large black hat. Image, Getty. Meghan steps inside Westminster Abbey. Image, Getty. The Duchess of Sussex arrives at Westminster Abbey. Image, Getty. Funeral procession route map, where to catch a glimpse of Queen for final time for the Queen's funeral procession today. Ceremonial viewing areas have been set up across London. Those hoping to watch should prepare for large crowds, as well as busy public transport, roads and motorways. Queues have already begun at the barriers, but where are the best vantage points to watch the Queen's final journey? Click here to find out. The Queen's coffin is carried through Westminster Abbey. Image, Getty. Key moments you may have missed at the Queen's funeral. Royal family members attended the Queen's state funeral on Monday, bidding farewell to their mother, grandmother and great-grandmother. The first service was held at Westminster Abbey, with a second taking place at St George's Chapel. Key moments from the service you may have missed include, King Charles III left a touching note for his mother on top of her coffin, Princess Charlotte wore a significant piece of jewellery to honour the Queen, Prince Andrew fought back tears as he entered Westminster Abbey behind the coffin procession, Kate, Princess of Wales lovingly reassured Prince George by resting her hand on his knee, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry comforted one another, holding hands on their way out of the funeral. Meghan Markle at funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. Image, PA, the Duke of Sussex took part in the procession to Westminster Abbey. Image, Getty, the King led the funeral procession. Image, Getty. Ahead of the funeral, the Sussexes were seen travelling down the Mall with a police escort at around 10:15 a.m. Harry and Meghan were driven in a Range Rover from Wellington Arch, down Constitution Hill and on the Mall towards St James Palace. 4 vehicles with flags were seen driving ahead of Harry's car. Meghan Markle at funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. Image, PA, the Sussexes were seen travelling down the Mall with a police escort at around 10:15 a.m. Image, Getty, the coffin departs Westminster Abbey following the service. Image, Getty, members of the royal family leave Westminster Abbey after the service. Image, Getty, it comes after the Queen's lying in state at Westminster Hall ended at 6:30 a.m. Thousands of ordinary people had queued for up to 24 hours to pay their respects in extraordinary scenes during the period. Chrissy Hiri, who was the last member of the public to leave the lying in state, said, "It's one of the highlights of my life and I feel very privileged to be here." The doors of Westminster Abbey opened at 8 a.m. as the first guests began to arrive ahead of the service at 11 a.m. Heads of state, prime ministers and presidents, members of European royal families and key figures from public life are gathering at the Abbey to say a final farewell to the nation's longest-reigning monarch. U.S. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden walked through the doors shortly after 10 a.m., while French President and his wife Brigitte, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau were in the congregation. Prime Minister Liz Truss and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer were among UK politicians paying their respects. Millions of people across the country watched the service on television on what is a national bank holiday in Britain. Crowds lined the streets of central London and all public viewing areas for the funeral procession in the capital were full by just after 9 a.m. The doors of Westminster Abbey opened at 8 a.m. as the first guests began to arrive. Image, Getty, a view inside Westminster Abbey as guests arrive. Image, Getty, Westminster Abbey's tenor bell started to toll at 9:45 a.m. once per minute for 96 minutes in a nod to the years of the Queen's life. Following the service, which ended at approximately noon, the coffin was taken in procession to Wellington Arch before setting off for Windsor. Once there, the hearse will make the journey in procession to St George's Chapel at Windsor Castle via the Long Walk, after which a televised committal service will take place. A solemn display of pomp and pageantry for the Queen's funeral. Image, Getty, crowds lined the streets of central London ahead of the funeral. Image, PA, Meghan Markle at funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. Image, PA, later in the evening, there will be a private interment service with members of the royal family. The Queen's final resting place will be the King George VI Memorial Chapel, an annex to the main chapel, where her mother and father were buried, along with the ashes of her sister, Princess Margaret. Her beloved husband Prince Philip's coffin will move from the royal vault to the Memorial Chapel to join his wife. Queen and Prince Harry in pictures. Image, Express. Trending. Meghan and Harry stepped down as working royals in March 2020 for new lives of personal and financial freedom in the US. They now live in California with their 2 children Archie and Lilibet. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex were already in the UK as part of a Europe trip when the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral on September 8. They have been staying at